We're talking more rookie wide receivers in context on RotoViz Radio.
What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. I'm Dave Caban, joined by Curtis Patrick. We're two of the owners here at RotoViz on what is just a momentous night here. Curtis, you must be flying high. How are we doing?
I'm doing great, man, for multiple reasons. So first off, I just poured a Kentucky Spirit New Frontiers for us tonight, right? We're trying some live streaming along with podcast. It's going to be the same thing you get from the podcast, but you get to see our beautiful faces, and we're going to try to show you some more of the behind the scenes with the RotoViz tools, a little bit of our research process, and just give another element to everything you've already been listening to. But in addition to that, the 2022 RotoViz Fantasy Football Rookie Draft Guide, Volume 1, dropped tonight in the inboxes. This was a lot of work, by the team, myself, you, Sean Siegel, Blair Andrews, Travis May, really a collective effort, and others even involved because of the Devy rankings that we do all year that help inform the front end of the process. So it is nice to have that done. We can spend the next month talking about it until the combine occurs and we get that next set of data to kind of update the rave.
Yeah, man. Really excited to have that out there to people to take a look at that beautiful finished product. I mean, this thing is clean this year, looks great. Analysis will be just as good as it looks, Curtis. So I'm eager to dig into that. Glad to be here broadcasting now in two different methods and to be talking some football with you. So if you are ready, Curtis, why don't we get into what I have prepared for today's episode? You ready for that?
Let's do it.
All right. So if you have been listening maybe the last week or two, you've probably heard some of these episodes where we've utilized the RotoViz Screener to add some historical context to a player's rookie year, in this case, get a better sense of the type of players that they match with given that rookie season, some of their rankings, and then we use that to kind of assess just how good or bad of a rookie campaign that player had. Today, we are going to start with two prospects that were highly touted coming out of school. One was a little more, divisive than the other. Ja'Marr Chase, Devonta Smith. I think everybody knows how ridiculous Chase was this year. Only Odell Beckham Jr. had more points per game, Curtis, in his rookie year than Ja'Marr Chase put up this, his rookie season, which is just ridiculous. I can't imagine that there's many people out there that would push back against the fact that he is truly elite and one of the, players positioned to kind of be a perennial powerhouse in fantasy circles. But let's just take a look at some of the numbers. So before we get into the screener, which in the screener, what I'm doing is looking at just players that are wide receivers in their year one season, and from there, grabbing some of the key wide receiver stats. But before we get into that, Ja'Marr Chase here, let's just review kind of the progression of the season. So Cincinnati opened the year against Minnesota. Chase puts up 21 points, follows that with 13.4 against Chicago, has his first wide receiver one performance of his career in week 3 with 22.5. Then interestingly, has a stretch, Curtis, where sandwiched in between his wide receiver one performances, in which he put up 22.5, 27.9, and 34.1, had a couple of games all right around that 13-point mark. Then in the back half of the season, put up 25.3 against San Francisco and 55.6 against Kansas City in week 17. to finish as a wide receiver 1 in 29% of weeks, wide receiver 12 in 12% of weeks, and a wide receiver 3 or worse in 59% of weeks. Now, that's actually kind of interesting because we do have that 55.6 really boosting up that per game average, which I think is something people would present, right, as a negative. I think it might be surprising to see.
Week will do that.
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, that's like, 3 or 4 weeks, depending on the wide receiver sandwiched into one. And I think people might be surprised to actually reflect and see that he was a wide receiver 1 only 29% of the time. When you're looking at a player that finished as the wide receiver 5 in total PPR, wide receiver 5 in PPR per game, was really efficient though, Curtis. Ranks 4th among wide receivers in fantasy points over expectation per game. Of course, scoring a lot of touchdowns, in which he ranks 3rd among wide receivers, will help with that. He was 4th in receiving yards, just 18th in targets, 9th in air yards, 15 in Whopper, 28 in Racer, 26 in expected points per game. So as I said, he was really efficient. And of course, a couple of big blow-up spots, notably that 55.6 point performance. Last week, we looked at Jalen Waddle, and he had an absolutely insane list of players that he comps to in the screener based upon receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns, percentage deep, receiving expected points, and PPR per game.
Yeah.
So Chase, closest matches, OBJ, Anquan Bolden, Marcus Colston, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Kelvin Benjamin, Eddie Royal, Mike Williams, Adrian Arrington, Charles Rogers, Brandon Ayuk, AJ Green, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Michael Clayton, and Roy Williams. That is an extremely impressive group of players. Likely, might be one of the most impressive groupings that you could possibly put together. Naturally, Chase crushed it this year. That shouldn't be that surprising. Any thoughts just on how ridiculous some of that is right there?
I mean, I guess the only thing I would layer onto it is the surrounding cast for Jamar Chase. I mean, Burrow's first contract, there's no worries there. He's got T. Higgins. Now they have all the skill players in place, and they can invest in the line, which is, anyone who's watched the Bengals a lot this playoff season and missed their regular season exploits, it's very clear that they have some investment to do there. But I think this team's just going to get better, man. They're just going to get better. It is very unique that Burrow and Chase, have the situation they have where they had all that chemistry before, entering the NFL together. And so, that's really kind of accelerated things. They're basically like in year 3 of playing, not basically, they are in year 3 of playing with one another, which I think is very helpful, but they can really do some historic things. I think this offense is set up better in every way than when Odell Beckham Jr. had his breakout in 2014, so famously. I mean, Burrow is better than Eli Manning. The surrounding cast of skill players around Jamar Chase is better than what was around Odell Beckham Jr. So, provided good health, I expect even better things. We've got a 17-game regular season now. He's got a chance to obliterate some records. Just the counting stats and rate type of stuff. But I just don't know how you're going to solve this Bengals defense. The only thing I think worth noting around Chase, for like year 2. So we're not obviously talking dynasty. It's indisputable that he's a true blue chip, dynasty diamond. No one will argue that. 3 first-round picks minimum for a player like this. Consensus top 2 wide receiver. But in redraft, I think there's going to be some of those years where, do he and T. Higgins kind of converge on one another, more in like the lower end wide receiver 1 range than one of them being at the tippy top. Because we've seen it happen twice in the playoffs already, where teams have just said, nope, we're not going to let Chase rack up all this yak and just completely dominate everything. And Burrow and Higgins said, fine, like we'll just run 15 and 20 yard ends all day and death by 1,000 paper cuts that way. So great situation for all of the Bengals, but what can you say about Chase? He's been just as legendary as a rookie as he was, as an underclassman at LSU.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, honestly, he's made a big impact on this young team making their way to the Super Bowl, which we haven't even talked about yet, right? On the show, I guess we have to mention that. That should stand for something. This team feels to me like a situation that, in comparison to OBJ, as you mentioned, feels a lot more sustainable. Obviously, you're going to have questions with a lot of these teams, but the success in the first year, not just for him, but for the team, is really something that is very impressive to me. So, you just can't say enough things about how excited people should be about Chase. As you noted, at least 3 firsts for Chase. Of course, if people go to the site and they check out the rankings, you will see our valuation on Chase in terms of how many picks we perceive that he should be. You can look at the other players and really get a sense of how bullish we might be on him or bearish on other wide receivers. So it might be a little bit more interesting now to shift our direction over to Devonta Smith, a player that you made a pretty good case for last year when people were questioning the impact that he might be able to have in relation to his size. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think that the situation in Philadelphia this year didn't lend itself as nicely as some might have hoped to him having success. Started off, though, with a really nice game, 19.1 points against the Falcons in week 1. Scoring kind of slowed, 3.6 against San Francisco, 5.8 against Dallas. Jumps up to his first wide receiver 1 performance in week 4 with nearly 20 points against the Chiefs. Then had a wide receiver 2 performance, 16.7 against the Panthers. Couple of low weeks, then sandwiched in weeks 9 and 10, put back-to-back 22.6 performances. Those were his last wide receiver 1 performances of the season. Finished with just one other game between weeks 11 and 18 in which he was a wide receiver 2 or better, and that was 19 points against the Giants. So 18% of his rookie season games were wide receiver 1 performances, 18% were wide receiver 2, leaving around 65% of his games as a wide receiver 3 or worse. Did rank 30th in targets, 34 in receptions, 26 in receiving yards, 30 in total touchdowns, 16th in air yards, 19 in Whopper. Struggled with converting those air yards, though, was 82 in Racer, 30 in total PPR, 42 in PPR per game, 46 in EP per game, and was average efficiency at 66 in fantasy points over expectation per game. Now, if we use the same
let's pause there for a second because I want to pause there for a second because I don't think that we want to lose this. This was Jalen Hurts' first full season as a starter. There was not really a complimentary wide receiver to Devonta Smith, player that I was a big fan of coming out of Jalen Reagor. Just not happening. It's just not happening. And the team whiffed the year before. J.J. Arcega-White, Zach Ertz moves on. Dallas Goedert really the only other notable weapon there. So the conversion factor. I didn't watch every Eagle snap this season, so I don't know if we had some off-target passes, if we had other reasons that they weren't converted, was he getting doubled or bracketed? But conversion is something that can improve with experience and reps. And when I see 12 air yards per hit, or a ranking of wide receiver 12 rather, in air yards per target with 14.1 actual air yards per target, I mean, that's a great baseline as a rookie. That is a valuable role. Top 24 in team target percentage, targeted down the field. I mean, geez, if there's just a modest improvement in the connection between he and Hurts, and perhaps the team adds a little help in the offseason, I mean, Smith could take a step forward that would either smooth out his production week to week, which as you noted, was pretty spiky. It is for wide receivers anyway, but it was especially spiky for him. Unfortunately, it was either you were pretty excited or he kind of hurt you in your starting lineup. That's not what we're really looking for. But if we could smooth that out by having a higher conversion factor, or if the booms were Jamar Chase level booms, and we're getting 1 or 2 of those 50-point weeks, next year, he could be a real best ball, weapon in addition to a redraft weapon. So, Dave, let's just transition and let's talk about, how he kind of fits historically with your work in the screener.
Yeah. So, again, same parameters that we would have used when we were talking about Chase. Closest match is Aaron Dobson's 2013 season, which I will admit I don't really remember too much about. You have DK Metcalf in there, Preston Williams, Percy Harvin, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Parker, Des Bryant, Torrey Smith, Elijah Moore, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Sammy Watkins, Calvin Johnson, Austin Collie, Jeremy Maclin, T.Y. Hilton, Chase Claypool, Akeem Nicks, and Sterling Shepard. So I have to note this here, right? Because we've talked about Waddle and Chase. They were the last two wide receivers we talked about. The list of comps that they generated are like generational lists. You're not going to see things like that very often, if at all, in the next like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. We'll see. Maybe I'm getting a little overzealous with that statement, but the point is that type of list that I just read down is really, really strong. When you see names like Calvin Johnson, now maybe Calvin Johnson isn't a good comp for him in many facets, but when you just look at the type of production that they had in their rookie year, it works. But like seeing guys like him, T. Higgins, Metcalf, Percy Harvin, Diggs, Des Bryant, even guys like Maclin and Collie and Hilton, that is a really, really impressive group of players. So I just want people to understand just how impressive that is, because given the last two players we looked at, you could be, misled at just how strong this is. So I think for Smith, there's some things that people on the surface could look at here and worry about, but you need to take a step back and just appreciate that this actually overall was a successful rookie campaign. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think it was great, man. I think he basically accomplished everything that we could have hoped for in the situation. He's playing with a relatively inexperienced quarterback, one that everyone was pretty much on the same page with around needing to develop as a passer. He was super accurate in college. It's one of the reasons why we thought he had some upside beyond his rushing ability. But, the Lincoln Riley system, kind of that air raid system, lots of mesh concepts, quick outs, getting the ball out quickly, not necessarily what the Eagles had in mind, or the player bank that they have to withdraw from right now. And so it's a work in progress. So when other teams knew that, Smith is really the only perimeter weapon on Philadelphia in 2021, for him to still produce this way, and have basically a 90% positive list of rookie year comps. You read through like 20 names. The only ones I'm not really actually excited about would be Preston Williams, Dede Westbrook, and Aaron Dobson. Everyone else on there, I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah.
Because it means Devonta Smith is at worst going to give us, a handful of wide receiver 2 seasons, which makes him a hit. It makes him a hit from a rookie draft perspective. It means he's not a bust from a dynasty startup perspective. But the high end on there is pretty high end. To your point, I don't think he's Calvin Johnson, but I think he could be Calvin Ridley. I don't think there's any reason. And, another player with a slight build, the difference is Ridley comes into the league and has Julio Jones to take away attention. And so, what are the Eagles going to do there to make things a little bit better? But they're going to have some dollars to spend in free agency. They have 3 early first-round picks to spend. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what Devonta Smith can do in year 2, and can he take that step towards being an actual fantasy wide receiver 1 and not just incumbent team wide receiver 1 from NFL purposes.
Yeah, and I think that you made a good point too when you were talking about the connection between Smith and Hurts, and how it's encouraging to see the air yards be there, and if we could have some element of them clicking more on actually converting those. So just for a perspective of how Hurts was in general, among passers that attempted more than 400 passes, he came in at 18th with his air yard conversion percentage of around 48, which is the guys around him. You had Aaron Rodgers at 49, Jared Goff at 48. Mahomes and Mayfield were around 46. So that's kind of where he falls into. Now we'd have to do some exploration to see, how sticky these things might be year over year. But if you look at other advanced metrics with Hurts as a passer, didn't finish quite as we looked at it earlier on in the season. He was doing really well for a stretch. Finishes more towards the middle of the pack in most things, but I think that the numbers do support that. He can play quarterback in the NFL. He's going to continue to do that. Maybe there's some steps they can take, and we kind of refine things in this offense. So I agree. Things could improve for Smith. Solid group of players to have after the first year. I guess the only thing that we need to do now is that we've established we like the rookie season, we're encouraged, is kind of put it in a little bit more of a context. So should people be, for lack of a way to qualify this with numbers, right? We'll use some adjectives. Should people be very excited, somewhat excited, or not really excited about Smith?
I mean, like, you gave me a lot of options, but I'm not sure that I even really like any of them. I mean, I just think that you should be what he returned based off of whatever you invested, I think is a fair return on investment. I think he proved that he is as advertised, nothing more, nothing less. And so in year two, I'm looking for him to basically produce as a more dependable, I think realistically in that offense, low end to mid wide receiver 2 for fantasy purposes. Now, if he can't take that leap in year 2 by converting a little bit more of that downfield passing attack, even as the team invests in other wide receivers, then he's going to basically fall into the big mess that is wide receiver 3 through wide receiver 5 in dynasty. I mean, all these guys are basically interchangeable. They're also basically interchangeable in best ball. The only real change or additional value that any of those guys provides is in week to week consistency from redraft purposes, so that you're not necessarily feeling like you got to stream that last flex spot or that last wide receiver spot. So that's really the only difference between any of the wide receiver 3s to 5s. I think if you invested mid to early rookie draft capital and Devonta Smith in the single QB league in particular last season, you're hoping for something more than that. You want more than a wide receiver 3, but I think it's very clear he's not going to bust. Like, I don't think anybody looks at him and says, well, this is not a usable player, or, we should have seen this coming from his profile because he's so slight and it didn't transition. He's been fine. He's totally been fine. He's beat some defenses.
Yep, not going to get any argument from me on that. Hey, but before we close down, I'm going to do a quick little segment here that you
got the drop.
know.
I didn't even tell you to check. I've got my note. I have my note. I got to tell Dave to check the bank every episode, so he doesn't play like some toilet flushing sound on one of my hot takes.
That was an intentional one there. I have now flipped the bank back, so I'm ready for the end of it. But that's my 1 second or less drop. So I just need some real quick responses from you here. Favorite article in the guide, or most interesting one from volume 1 from the rookie draft guide that we just published?
Oh man. I feel like I have to say, am I a bad podcast partner if I don't say your articles? They're all so unique, man.
No, my article's not mine's not the best, and they're the most interesting. I'm sure of that. So give it where it's due.
I think they all, honestly, it's a cop-out answer, and I know you want a quick one. The quick one's going to be that they're all great. I mean, it's 28 pages of goodness, and all of us played a different role in this thing. It's why I'm so excited about it, man. I've kind of built my personal and on practical application. How do you teach and actually use it to win your leagues? And so that's what I've done. I ran our team through some exercises to create analyst ADP, get our rankings and tiers together, and give my thoughts on what that actually means and how you should spend your rookie picks, what they might be worth this year versus other years. Dave, I love your breakaway rush score and your quarterback research. Blair, give another look at running backs. Sean, obviously, he's our wide receiver guru. And I think you're going to, for long-term fans of Sean's work, with breakout age and dominator rating, we have to admit, as any data site should, and as any film site should, this is not the most complete data we've ever had on a draft class. I mean, we had some opt-outs from, some reasonably important prospects. And then we missed half of the 2020 season for most players. And so, historical comparative analysis is very difficult. And there's a lot of adjusting. You can do some things per game, but then you didn't have the same level of competition, and different conferences handled things differently. And so all of that is different. And so I think this year more than ever, it's really important to get broad input from across the industry, but especially from our team, because we have a really good mix. Again, I'm the practical application. We have multiple guys that are just fantastic researchers and can convey why the research is important and why they think it's actionable, so that I can actually preach that gospel. And then Travis even is a little bit more in tune with the film side of things, and of course he's creating metrics too, like his API for wide receivers. But Travis watches more college football than anybody I know, so it just all works together, man. That wasn't 1 second; it was probably 3 minutes. But I've spent the last week and a half just pouring word from the entire team, and it was a labor of love for all of us, and we're just excited for everybody to see it.
Yes. All right. So I'm only going to ask you one more question now, seeing as my 1 second or less but I knew that was going to happen, so that's fine. Give us one name of a player that perhaps before you saw some of this research coming together, you hadn't really spent too much time in your mind kind of like daydreaming about getting him on a roster. Who might that guy be now that's kind of changed for you?
It always ends up being these round 3 picks. Every year I find myself getting super interested in the top of round 3, so I can just be like a round early on the guys that I really want in that range. And one name from a smaller school that has really been popping for me at the wide receiver position is Skye Moore. You can pull the guide to find out why. Definitely, but I'm pretty excited about Skye Moore as an early value. Dave, same question back to you, man.
Oof, that's a great one.
He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready.
No, I wasn't ready, just because there are so many of those names. And I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
I see what I'm doing is I'm searching in my mind for the player that I know in a couple of the mocks that we did that I took like 3 times back to back.
Yes.
And I can't recall who that was. So this is a terrible, terrible answer. But I will say, if you have not checked out some Cincinnati this year, right? Their running back,
Jerome Ford.
Right. Thank you.
I got you.
I find the profile really, really interesting. Also, in my uneducated football opinion, watching film, right? From what I've seen, I find very exciting. He was a player that I spent some time taking in some of these mocks kind of later on. And I felt pretty good about getting him there. So he's a player that I think, some people might be intrigued after they see that profile and start taking a closer look at.
Yeah, we all kind of found our way into those guys. This is what's so exciting, man. So we'll give a little thumb through here. We got the Treylon here on the cover, just an absolute monster. You're going to be really excited about this player. There's a lot of stuff out there saying this class isn't going to provide the goods. That's debatable. There's going to be some hits out of this class for sure. I think this monster is going to be one of them. But just to give you an idea, we've got our rankings and tiers. We got some fun stats in here. We've got practical application for every type of league. And then this was what I was referring to earlier, is these exercises where we kind of created some analyst ADP. We did 3 rapid fire rookie drafts back to back out of different draft spots. It was really, really fun. So anyway, check it out. You can go to rotoviz.com right now. Just click on 2022 rookie guide. A couple key things to note. For $20, you get all 3 volumes. So you get this volume, which is the pre-combine volume. Obviously, we updated it with some of the athletic measurements from the combine and pro days in March. And so that'll be volume 2. And then volume 3 is obviously, about a week, a couple of days to a week following the NFL draft. So for $20, you get all 3 of those volumes. They go straight to your inbox after you paid. Don't have to remember to remind us. Dave's got that all engineered. Or if you just want to take a look at, one volume, you can pick up volume 1 for $10. You do get a 15% off coupon or a coupon code, discount code to rotoviz.com, 12-month subscription with your purchase. So that's worth $9. So if you just buy volume 1, it basically costs you $1. If you want to look at it that way, or all 3 volumes for $11. You're providing a lot of value here on top of the analysis, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. So we will be back here with you folks on Wednesday morning. Currently, I'm a little fluid on what that show sheet is going to look like. So Curtis and I,
that's all right. We're gonna have to remember multiple times too now, because this is live Monday night, but people are listening on Tuesday morning on Apple Podcasts and other places, and then we're gonna record tomorrow night and live broadcast, but then they'll listen on Wednesday morning. So all of the normal days of the week stuff that we talk about, we're going to have to kind of relearn and write ourselves some notes.
Yes. Well, it's a good thing you've got the soundboard note. I might just, I'm just going to skirt around.
The second note will be day effort. It is.
Yeah. I will just be avoiding using language that references time, day, or anything of that nature. But I think we're good to close things down. So as always, everybody, appreciate you checking in with us. Looking forward to working our way to the Super Bowl and into draft season. Thank you for listening to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. Send us questions at rvffshow